Good morning. Okay. Innovation requires a lot of flexibility and improvisation. You've got all of that. Thank you very much for having me here while we sort out the presentation. I hope you're still awake. There's been a lot of conversations and talks. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you very much. We've got good friends in Greece. I think you are really at the forefront of innovation, and you should be. Yes, Western civilization pretty much started out here, so I'm going to talk about how we can make that work in the digital environment. I am sort of at the end of my flexibility and small talk. Thank you, Georgia. Okay, I'm just going to start anyway. If you could just start the movie, that would be fantastic. Okay, so with Europeana, we started about 6 years ago. We embarked on a journey together. We embarked on a journey to establish and achieve a very big idea. We wanted to build the largest open museum, library, archive in the world, built on the content that we all accumulate here in Europe. And we still firmly believe in that idea. I think that is very much at the forefront, and we've achieved quite a bit. In numbers, that means that we have now 43 million objects. 500,000 of those would be from Greece. All of that, you may not even be aware of that, but you are cultural innovators. All that metadata of those 500,000 objects is under a public domain CC0 license. So you've made all of that available in a very sustainable and open and value-added way. We've developed standards together, technical standards to be able to make that metadata interoperable with linked open data and the web of the future. We've done that in a very collaborative way. We now have 3,100 institutions participating, about 1,800 individuals, many of you are in this room, contributed to that. So I think that was a fantastic achievement. However, 6 years down the line, we're now, let's say, to take the metaphor from the Odyssey, we're resting at the island of Calypso, which is a pretty comfortable situation. We've done a lot. There's crisis around us, crisis of identity, crisis of economic sustainability, and we need to really think about how we can radically change that environment. So I'm going to call upon you in this presentation to see how we can achieve that together, because we're not done. We're actually only at the beginning. So what are the things that we've learned in this journey? Amongst others, prepare your presentations really well beforehand and make sure that you're not dependent on any technology. Mental note to self. We've also learned that metadata by itself, even if the metadata is very openly accessible, is not sufficient. To give you an indication of that 43 million objects that we currently have, about half of them are legally reusable under the frameworks that we've set, the Creative Commons frameworks that allow you explicitly to do things with it. 14% of that is openly accessible, meaning it's CC BY is a public domain or public domain marked CC0. Now, we found out during our journey that there is a direct correlation between value and openness. This is not anymore fiction. It's not a religion anymore. It's something that we can actually prove. And you'll hear presentations this afternoon, particularly from my colleague from the Rijksmuseum, about how that works in practice if you do it well. So having 43 million objects by itself doesn't mean a whole lot. It means that things are findable. That's great. But the real value of what we're building here is something completely different. We need to be building an infrastructure that allows us to build new creative works. And doing that requires all of you to embark on a new journey, a journey that allows us to make the content itself, the media, interoperable, findable, usable in a technical way and also in a very creative way. So, I'd like to discuss 7 points that I think Europeana can be of help to you. Europeana is not an endpoint for anything, it's just a means for you to embark on your own journey to make Greece, there we go, wow, that was good timing, fantastic. That was my very first point. We can help you develop your own national strategies or support your national strategy and increase your international visibility of your collections. If I can go to the next slide. We've already got fantastic works from you. Next slide, Kuroi from all over the world. I think this one comes through the Italian aggregator, which is an interesting fact by itself. You can have the next slide. We've got several hundreds versions of works, primary and secondary sources around the Odyssey. And next slide, we also have more ephemeral work, Nana Mouskouri in this case. This is, I think, quite appropriate during the European Song Festival. If we can, next slide, 500,000 digital assets. In the next slide, you'll see that this is that direct correlation I was talking to you about. On the very bottom half, you will probably not be able to read it, you see works that are available through Europeana. We get about 6 million visits on the Europeana website. Now, that may not be earth-shattering to you, and it really isn't. But if you see in the red bar and in the green bar, if we are able to use the material on social media, if we're able to put that on new social websites such as Etsy, if we're able to put that on Wikipedia, the 5th best visited website in the world, and we can contribute to that significantly, that is where value really lies. Could I have the next slide? Your targets actually are being discussed on a European level, and I know Europe is not always a very positive word anymore in this country. But I do think that together we can build that vision of Europe as a cultural entity, a cultural and economic entity, I should say. So there are targets, and I was very glad to hear from your minister that already there are plans to digitize another 500,000 works. So you'll shatter this in no time. Like I said, there's a direct correlation between what you provide and what you can expect out of it. This is a framework that we're building through our network. Many of you are involved in that, Vera Kridzi in the audience in particular. We'd like to implement this framework also in your institution so that it becomes clear that if you provide only metadata, or if you're able to provide more open content, more open metadata, a lot more things are possible. Next slide. I'm going to show you a couple of things that we're now under development. We're completely revamping the Europeana portal. During our journey, we found out that this is actually one of the weaker points. It's not yet the place where the user experience is best achieved. But by the end of this year, by October, we'll have a newly revamped website. If we could have the next slide, we'll be diving much deeper into specific subject areas. Music, art, and art in particular, we're going to create a, next slide, big PR campaign across Europe. So I'd like to invite all of you directors who are sitting here in this room who are not yet participating in Europeana. This is the time to embark. We're going to promote the hell out of your collections if you embark right now. Excusez the Americanism here. But this is a good time to join us and to work with us. We have the next slide. Actually, the next slide after it. We will be showcasing works from all countries. We'll make no distinction. Obviously, the Milkmaid from my own home country, the Netherlands, will be featured there. But we need, next slide, all of your works. And the next slide, such as the Death Mask of Agamemnon and other works, to be present there. Because otherwise, in the future, Greece will not get the place that it deserves on the European landscape. And I'm really serious about this. I think you need to get your act together, be radical, and join this ship. Next slide, please. But that's not all. The increased visibility is only part of the thing that we can do together. You'll be joining a community. And I think I can safely say this is one of the most vibrant international communities of cultural heritage innovators. You'll meet museum people, librarians, archivists, digital activists, Wikipedians, startup entrepreneurs, all of that into one place. And I think that is something that you can really, really benefit from. Next slide. This is just a quick example, a sample, I should say, of all the organizations who are already participating, Postscriptum being a very important one, and we're always very happy to cooperate with you. Next slide. We develop 3 websites. One of it is to browse the content, but this one, the professional website, is actually one that is being used more and more and more to develop standards together, frameworks, policies, so that we can change copyright policy together and make that available, those frameworks, for everyone else in our communities. Next slide. It can also be a bit more prosaic. It's not all high up in the air idealism. There's money. In European context, you can work together in European projects to innovate. Horizon 2020, Creative Europe, those are places where there's still money available. It's significantly less on a European scale than it used to be. But this is a place where in the Europeana context, you will find the partners that you need to enable to do the things that you wanted to do anyway. The next slide. The Greek are already very well versed in this game. 33 is on the latest count, partners in 33 projects. 7 million euros have been made available to Greek institutions to participate. Next slide. This one is just blatant self-promotion. We're part of Europeana Creative, and many Greek organizations are as well, in particularly NTUA. We have a conference in Vienna, and I'd urge you to come. You can sign up this week, still for an early bird fee. There'll be some very, very cool people and speakers there. So, next slide, please. There are other things. There are some really big things that we can develop together to lower costs. We all have costs, but if we all continue to build our own little websites, our own content management systems, our own metadata schema, our own hosting platforms, that'll probably stay a very costly affair. If I could have the next slide. One of the things that you can participate in is a very communal build platform that we call Europeana Cloud, where everyone will be invited to, on a very cost-efficient basis, host their content, make it available to anyone that you choose for. So this one will be released in its first version in January 2016. Next slide. A balance sheet also always has 2 sides. You can lower your costs, you can increase your business. That is really an important part and a very difficult part for us. We don't like the idea that we are just throwing away our cultural assets, the things that belong to every one of us, just for commercial gain. However, we need to become more entrepreneurial. How do we do that? We have the next slide. The honest answer is we don't really know. And I think that's okay, as long as we continue to think about it in a very cooperative way, thinking about that sustainability side on the social as well as an economic level, that's fine. The example that I'm giving you here is from a project that was, or actually a challenge that was awarded to Europeana Beacons, and they developed a fantastic tool that allows you to cruise around cities, in this case that's Pisa, using beacon technologies, which will allow you very precise geolocation information and really experience cities in a completely new way. Open source software. It's available for every one of you. I can bring you in touch with these people. And new things can be developed here in Athens or anywhere here in Greece. The next slide. This actually I find a bit boring, but it's an interesting statistic anyway. Do you realize that you're in the 3rd largest industry in Europe, just behind construction and food and beverage? I thought that was quite amazing in terms of employment. Fastest growing industry in Europe, so Europe is really investing in you, and you need to be investing in yourself to really make this happen. The next slide. Finally, this is the vaguest of all, but I think also the most fundamental. if we don't continue to innovate and think of ourselves not as museum curators per se, where preservation is the mantra, or archivists or librarians, but as innovators in our sector. I think that's the only way. If we change our paradigms on who we are and what we try to achieve to do, that's how we get to new things. If I can have the next slide. I think one of the most significant things we've done together in the Europeana context is on a copyright and intellectual property area, on metadata. And we're currently lobbying hard to represent your interests in Brussels, where copyright changes are being decided as we speak. These are the types of things that you want your voice to be heard. And I would encourage you to participate in all the Europeana initiatives in this area. If we do this well, and I could have the next slide, then we can develop case studies together where we've been successful. I'm not going to do Peter Gorgel's presentation for him, but we love what the Rijksmuseum did. Yeah, that's my honest answer, and we need a lot more of that. And I think what's interesting about it is if you dissect what's happened there, and I hope Peter will talk a little bit about it, it's not, again, out of sheer idealism. There was an economic rationality behind it, which led them to say, yes, this completely fits the way that we want to operate. We are a museum for the people, we're public. There's an economy behind it, and that economy and the public purpose is best served by opening up not only our small digital assets, but even in the highest resolution. The point I'm trying to make is that if we can learn from what's happened there and implement it in other settings, then we think we can get the ball rolling in terms of innovating. This is the framework that we have in the back of our minds at Europeana. It goes a bit too far to really explain it in detail, but what we try to do is balance out the social and cultural innovation, the economic innovation, and the infrastructural innovations in everything that we do. And we need to force ourselves to continue doing that. Whenever we feel we're straying too much in one side or the other without achieving the right balance, we try to tell ourselves to stop or to change our course of action. So this is my final slide. I'd like you to continue the work that you're doing. You're one of the most important assets in Europe in terms of cultural heritage. I encourage you and I plea that you continue to work and be radical and really, do everything you can. And we hope you to join us. Thank you.